Mindready. This is an interesting case. Kind of complicated, but this issue keeps popping up over and over and over again. This is an advanced, really advanced tax thing. How do I take a public company or a very large company and make it into a CCPC to do the R&D? All right, and it requires you understand the difference between how we classify a public company and a private company. It's really on control. The whole issue is if a private company, it's got to be incorporated and be private, can't be listed on a stock exchange, prescribed Canadian stock exchange. If a company's private, the next thing that they're going to look at is it controlled in any manner whatsoever, is what the Act says, by any combination of public companies or foreign parties. Right? So if I'm controlled by foreign parties, I'm not a qualified CCPC. And if I'm controlled by public companies, I'm not a qualified CCPC. So it makes sense. It's very simple in that case. What happened here is we had this company that was public, doing SR&D, claiming a non-refundable 20% ITC, but it wasn't making any money, so it couldn't use those credits. They were wasted, those credits. And it said, hey, if I incorporate another CCPC, I'll double my credits and I'll get them all back as cash. So they did that. They incorporated another company and claimed the 35% ITC, roughly $250,000 in that year, federal credit, so plus whatever provincial. So maybe 350, depending what province they're in. Now, the management control group of the companies was the same people. Here, if you know about control, you're realizing the big problem. So what they did is they took their public company from 99, and in 2005, they spun out another private company. Okay? And then they created a trust to control that. But the problem was, ultimately, the same people controlled it, so they deemed it to be, even though it was the people, they deemed it to be controlled by the public company. Although technically it wasn't, the courts kind of meshed it in there. So, yeah, so associated, if not controlled, they extrapolated that. So again, under the Act, I'm not sure really how the law works. You got to read Section 256, which is very complicated, that starts to make these kind of deeming provisions. And this is a very advanced area. There's a lot of, every year there's a case like this. Okay? So these are, to show you how complicated it is, these are the relevant sections of the Act. What's a public company? What's a private company? What's a non-qualifying corporation? What's a qualified corporation? So you've got to go through all these sections. So what they said was to decide, since there was no voting control, what they said was the same people control it was an indicator of control, but there's no voting control of the public company controlling the private company. So we're going to look at something called de facto control. Is there anything to say that the owners of the public company could make the private company do whatever it wants? And they talk about a whole bunch of them. They only had one client. So the private company only had one client, the public company. If it didn't pay them, well, it's kind of strong evidence of control. Provided surety for a loan, had consolidated financial statements, owned all the public company owned all the intellectual property, all the royalties, everything, right? So the judge said ultimately, looks like de facto control of the public company over it. Now, having said this, these guys lost, but there's a lot of similar cases in the last couple of years where the client won. Perfect Fry, where they won. Lyric, almost the same fact scenarios are very similar. So I don't know what to say about this. Sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're going to lose. And again, spinning off an R&D CCPC from a public company or a foreign company is doable. I've done it numerous times, but I haven't made most of the mistakes that these guys have. And if you're going to do that, you want to contemplate de facto control. All right.
So what's the right way of doing it?
Oh, the right way of doing it is easy. Let's say I have a foreign company. They're in some place of a low tax jurisdiction. And they want to do research here. What do I tell them to do? And I've already run this by Ottawa. I thought it sounded dicey, but Ottawa says it's following the law. I say, take the researchers that you're going to hire. Have them incorporate a company, Canadian R&D Co. They own it. You don't own anything. You hire them. You're a foreign company. You pay them to do research for you, but you own the worldwide rights, and you give them some entitlement to exploit. Does anyone know what is entitlement to exploit? This is a really neat definition that they used to have and they took out of it. They say the new policy documents haven't changed anything, but they just took that cool definition out. Entitlement to exploit is kind of open. You don't have to own the rights. You need some preferential entitlement to sell it, or preferred marketing for a region, or anything could indicate something that Joe off the street wouldn't have could be entitlement to exploit. Doesn't mean you have to own it. Okay? So you ensure that the Canadian company has some entitlement to exploit. Maybe they have the Canadian rights, maybe they have a royalty on this. Who cares? Something. One of the many things that they listed. Something in there. Okay? You pay them, whatever, $1 million a year. They spend it all on research. They get their credit all on wages, let's say. So they get 60 cents of that dollar back and they keep reinvesting it. They're happy. Everyone's happy. And it's a CCPC. It's not controlled. Now, does it only have one client? Whatever. You set it up so that it starts with one client, but it's not restricted to one client. You want to make it like a standalone company that could eventually grow into something else. There are risks to doing that. What if the guys mutiny and they go off, well, whatever. Doesn't matter. You've got your contract that the money they paid you, which was you're going to invest anyways, you get the rights to that under contract. So you can take them to court or whatever the case may be, right? That's the proper way to do it. That's completely legit.